It is 5 BC, and God is being born in a cave in a small town called Bethlehem. You probably think you know this story. You do not know it the way it actually happened. Tonight we are going to walk the whole map of his life, every step, from that cave to a village that is not named once in the entire Old Testament, down to the lowest patch of ground on the face of the earth, out to a border town with a tax booth on it, and north to a cliff the pagans called the Gate of Hell. Then south to a garden, a courtyard, 4 trials in a single night, and a hill outside the city walls, and then to a tomb that did not hold. And I am holding one thing back until the very end, because when you lay every one of those places side by side, there is a pattern running through them that I do not believe you have ever been shown. It changes who you think this story was written for, so stay with me all the way to the finish. It is 5 BC. Israel is under the boot of Rome. Roman taxes are taking a crushing share of everything a family earns. Crucifixions stand along the roads as public warnings, and a dying, paranoid king sits on the throne in Jerusalem. And for 400 years, since the last of the prophets, God has not said one word to his people. 4 centuries of silence. And when he finally breaks it, he does not send word to the temple. He does not send word to the palace. The first people on earth told that God has come are shepherds. Now understand what that meant. In 1st century Israel, a shepherd could not enter the temple courts because the work kept him ceremonially unclean, and his testimony was not admissible in a Jewish court. If a shepherd swore he had seen a thing with his own eyes, the court was not obliged to hear it. Those are the men the angels were sent to. Hold on to that, because it is the first thread of the pattern. Let me be honest with you first, the way I would want somebody honest with me. Some of what I am about to tell you is in the Gospels in plain words, and some of it is what we know about that world from history and from what has been dug out of the ground. I will tell you which is which as we go. I will not dress a guess up as a verse. But the geography is not decoration. It is part of what the book is saying. So, Bethlehem. We picture a wooden stable, and there is no wooden stable in the text. The word is a manger, a feeding trough, and in that country, animals were sheltered in caves cut back into the limestone. Whatever else it was a hole in a rock where animals ate. Now hold that beside where the story ends, because the man born in a cave in a rock was laid 33 years later in another cave in a rock. He entered the world through a hole in a hillside, and he left it through one. And 40 days after that birth, Luke tells us his parents came to the temple and offered 2 turtle doves. That detail is easy to read past. The law said, bring a lamb, and if you cannot afford a lamb, bring 2 birds. Luke is telling us quietly that the family could not afford a lamb. They did not need one. They had brought him. Then comes the part almost nobody knows. After Egypt, when they came back, Joseph did not go home to Bethlehem, and he did not go to Jerusalem. He was warned off, and he went north to Galilee, to a village called Nazareth. Now here is what you should know about Nazareth. It is not mentioned one single time in the entire Old Testament, not once. It was a settlement of perhaps a few hundred people, and it was so unremarkable that when Nathanael first hears the name, his response is a joke. Can there any good thing come out of Nazareth? But look at where it sits. A short walk from that village ran the Via Maris, the great trade road that carried caravans between Egypt and Damascus, the whole world moving past on the other side of the ridge. And an hour's walk away, Herod Antipas was building a city. So God did not hide his son in a wilderness. He hid him beside a highway. 30 years in a town nobody would ever think to search, close enough to hear the empire going by. And of those 30 years, we are given exactly one scene. He is 12, and his parents lose him in Jerusalem, and they find him 3 days later in the temple, sitting with the teachers. And the text is careful about what he was doing. He was not being taught, he was asking questions and hearing them, and all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. And then 18 more years of silence. Nothing. He worked. That is the whole record of nearly 2/3 of his life. Then he leaves, and he walks to the Jordan. And here is a detail that will change how you read the baptism. The Jordan Valley is the lowest dry land on the surface of the earth, around 400 meters below sea level. There is no place on this planet a man can stand that is further down. That is where he chose to begin, not on a mountain, at the bottom of the world. And it is not a random low place either. That is the crossing where Joshua brought Israel into the land. That is where Elijah was taken up. He walked into water thick with beginnings and endings, and when he came up out of it, the heavens opened, and a voice said, "This is my beloved Son." Then straight from the lowest ground into the wilderness, 40 days, and Satan waiting. Now when he began to preach, he went home to Nazareth first, and they tried to throw him off a cliff, his own town. The people who watched him grow up. He walked through the middle of them and left, and as far as we are told, he never went back. So he moved to Capernaum, and this is where the map starts saying something. Think about it. If you wanted to launch a movement in that country, you went to Jerusalem. The temple was there, the scholars were there, the crowds and the money and the authority were all there. He had every qualification. He went to Galilee instead, a northern region the religious elite looked down on because it was full of Gentiles and trade and mixed blood. And inside Galilee, he settled in a border town with a customs post on it, a place where Rome collected its money and where a man like Matthew sat taking it. He did not set up next to the temple. He set up next to a tax booth. And then he went further out still. He took his disciples all the way north to Caesarea Philippi, and this is the strangest location choice in the Gospels. There was a cliff face there with a great cave mouth in it, and pagan temples built along the rock, and the local people believed that cave was a doorway down into the realm of the dead. They called it the Gate of Hell. And it was there, standing in front of that he asked, "Whom say ye that I am?" And Peter said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." He did not say that in the temple. He said it with his back to the place they thought hell came out of. From there, the map turns south and does not turn again. He set his face to go to Jerusalem. And in a garden of olive trees on the slope outside the city, on the last night, Luke records that his sweat was, as it were, great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Luke was a physician. There is a condition, very rare, in which extreme distress ruptures the small vessels around the sweat glands and blood comes through the skin. Whether that is what Luke was describing, I cannot tell you for certain. But the man who wrote it down was a doctor, and he chose to write it down. Then the trials, and in the middle of them, one detail that I think is the sharpest irony in the whole Bible. Pilate offers the crowd a choice between two prisoners, and in some of the oldest manuscripts of Matthew, the other prisoner is not simply called Barabbas. He is called Jesus Barabbas. Now the name Bar-Abbas means son of the Father, so the question Pilate put to that crowd was, "Which Jesus do you want? Which son of the Father?" And they took the murderer, and the innocent one went to the cross in the guilty one's place. Barabbas is the only man in history who can say the literal, physical truth of it. That cross was built for me, and he took it. And then Golgotha, and the darkness from the 6th hour to the 9th, and the veil torn, and a tomb sealed with a stone and a Roman guard on it. And on the first day of the week, the tomb was open and the body was gone, and the first people told were women. Now understand what that meant then, because it is the same thing as the shepherds. In that culture, a woman's testimony carried almost no weight in a legal setting. It was not what a court was built to accept. If you were inventing a resurrection story and you wanted it believed, women are the last witnesses you would write in. Which brings me to what I held back. Look back over the whole map. Shepherds, whose word was inadmissible. A town that is not in the Old Testament. The lowest ground on earth. A despised region and a tax booth. A cliff the pagans called the gate of hell, and women at the tomb. Every single one of them is a place or a person that the world had already ruled out. And here's the thing I want you to sit with. It could have been done another way. The announcement could have gone to the Sanhedrin. He could have been born in Jerusalem to a family with standing. The resurrection could have been reported first by men whose oath a court would have taken without question. It was not, and that was not an accident, because nothing else on that map was an accident either. If God had used the credentialed and the qualified, the story would have proved that God works through the credentialed and the qualified, and most of us would have been outside it looking in. Instead, he put the whole thing, from the first announcement to the last, in the hands of people whose word officially did not count. And it survived anyway. It went across the empire in a generation, carried by fishermen and by women, most of whom died refusing to take it back. So if you are watching this tonight feeling like you are the wrong sort of person for God to use, that you are too far down, too far out, too unqualified, that nobody would look for anything of God in a life like yours, then you have understood the map exactly backwards. Nobody would have looked in Nazareth either. That was the point of Nazareth. He was born in a cave, raised in a village not worth naming, baptized at the bottom of the world, and announced by people no court would listen to. And he is still working the same way, still choosing the ones already ruled out, still standing in front of the gate of hell telling us it will not prevail. Now, if this lifted something heavy off your heart tonight, or showed you something in that book you had never once been told, do me one small kindness. Press that like button and subscribe to the channel so these words can find their way to some other soul sitting in a quiet house tonight who needs to hear them just as badly as you did. God bless you, and may His peace keep your heart all the way home. I'll see you next time.